Thank you very much, Himen Agunloye, Business Opportunity Manager for SPDC. Yourself and your colleague in the fire chat presentation, Agbola, have set the tone, set the stage for this panel to start. So let me begin quickly. You're already seated. She's on the panel. Joining her on the panel is the Chairman, Petroleum Contractors Trade Section, and the Country Manager for Technip FMC, Mr. Tayo Akinkumi. You're welcome. Also on the panel is the Chief Executive of Petroleum Training Institute. You've listened to Himen talk about training and research, and he comes in with a lot of experience and expertise in that regard. Dr. Henry Edimole. We're talking about humanizing energy and what the future leaders will do about it. This next panelist is one of such present and future leader of the industry, Managing Director of Keon West Africa International, Dr. Victor Ekpeyong. You're welcome. Yesterday we were told by Mr. Naikam of Shell how excited Shell is to be having this, what he called impact investment in terms of power generation using renewable sources. And All On is that arm of Shell doing that. Chief Executive Officer All On, Caroline Eboumbou. You're welcome. Well, if you're looking to groom future leaders, you need an industry seasoned expert, an elder, to show them the direction to go, where the bodies are buried, and what mistakes not to make. He is one of such leader. Research professor and chair at the University of Cape Coast, Ghana, Professor Wumi Iledari, our moderator. Dipo Agbola will also be making interventions whenever the moderator needs him to, but he'll be doing that from where he's seated. I'll just hand him a microphone. So, Prof, the stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, and let me again express my deep appreciation for the invitation to be here. And I also welcome all my distinguished panel. I'm particularly excited because I can see a lot of young emerging professionals, even supported by those that have already arrived. Yes, anything we do in this planet Earth is about human beings. In fact, if we go to creation for those who believe in it, everything that is of importance for human being to survive, God put it on this planet Earth, and we are endowed. Yes, energy transition is not static, it is dynamic. And quite often it could take about 60 years to move from one energy source to the other. And that energy source in itself will not disappear. And I think we saw it in the fire presentation and even the presentation by the permanent secretary. Well, ours is to find a way, looking into the future, that whatever we do, especially when it comes to developing energy resources, exploring and exploiting them, is about maximizing the social welfare of human beings. Even the climate change discussion is about how to maximize the social welfare of you and I. And that means there must be a way for us to balance the energy transition dynamics. And there are 4 components to it that we're going to talk about, and also advance some of the strategic thinking that Africa must adopt in order to maximize our social welfare. There are 4 elements that are quite important when you are trying to translate energy resources to human optimization in their lifestyle. And that is what humanizing energy really is. First is what we call accessibility. There must be energy access in whatever form that it is for human use, for social, economic, and national development. Second is what we call availability. You may have abundant energy resources, be it renewable or fossil fuel, but it may not be available for human consumption. How do we make that to happen without necessarily destroying the purpose of living? Finally, or the third element, when we're trying to go along the humanization of energy, is what we call acceptability. It is one thing to promote an energy source, it's another thing for it to be acceptable to a particular society. And all of these elements must be balanced if you are supposed to accomplish the purpose. And finally, it's all about economics. Affordability. Yes, it may be available, it may be accessible, it may also be acceptable, but if it is not affordable, it's of no consequence. So I want to welcome my panel. And what we are going to do is to allow them to have 5 minutes and give a perspective the way I've given my own perspective. And so we have 3 of them that have not spoken, am I right? Or 4? 4 of them. I'll give them about 4 to 5 minutes to just make a perspective on the humanization mechanism that will not necessarily compromise sustainable environment, guarantee energy security for the future, and at the same time, what can we do to make energy affordable? And I'll start from my extreme right, Tayo.
Yes, sir.
You have 5 minutes to let us know what it is that you have in mind that can really support this journey of making sure our thinking going forward is energy humanization. It's about human, period.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you. Remember the time framework.
Oh, yeah, that time. Thank you. First, I had to get the professor to promise me this is not going to be graded, because the last time I got questions from professors, I think I got a D or something. So I don't want to be under that pressure. Thank you very much, sir. That's just a little bit of a recap of what's been said, and I completely agree with it. But for me, it's the world, in spite of all the concerns, some of them being valid, some of them being overblown, everyone agreed that we don't want to go back to the dark ages, right? So we need energy. But then, energy is needed for the human race to do what we need to do, to survive, to progress, and all. But at the same time, there's the other extreme of it that says we should not, overlook the concern about, what the impact of what we are doing, be it energy usage or energy derivation or anything else we do in our endeavors, how those will impact the sustainability of our system as we know it. So these are fair discussions to have. I choose to focus on one item, and the reason for that will be pretty obvious now. Ambassador Aduda, I was introducing myself to him just now, and I said I'm the chairperson of PCTS. And he said, what is PCTS? And I'm like, okay. Again, so I'll do it again. PCTS. So you know OPTS. They're the producers. They're the rich boys. PCTS is the broke brothers of those. So we are the contractors, the service contractors that helps our customers, the OPTS folks, to do their work. And the reason for why I'm saying that is we believe and focus on technology, and that's what comes to mind when we see a problem. It's what has driven our industry to where it is today, and we believe it's what we need to deploy. So how then can technology help with the trilemma of energy, which is, as the prof said, I put it into 3 areas: accessibility, availability, which is part of accessibility, affordability, and sustainability. If I start from the accessibility side of it, the need For energy security is important, and everybody's established that. But what we know is that technology has a long way to go, but we still have opportunities to improve the accessibility, the availability of energy. So there's still some work we need to do. There's a lot of areas in the renewable side of the business, or of the spectrum rather, that needs to be done. We need to improve our storage capability. We need to improve the efficiency of our systems. We need to look at energy grid and smart energy grids and things like that will help us make energy, distributed grid, by the way, for renewables to make energy available. So there are technologies in that area that are there to be deployed, and there a lot of work to be done. Battery technology still needs a lot of work, but there's progress being made in there. But the purpose of that, again, is to make energy available. Then the next one is accessibility. Affordability. And that pretty much goes to the point of making that energy affordable for the population that needs it. There was a number that was quoted. Africa has about maybe 17% of the world population, and we're consuming less than 3% of the energy compared to the rest of the world. Why is that? I would say part of it is because people just cannot afford it. Again, going back to technology, we need to find ways to improve project economics. I know most of the people sitting here are either involved in a tender or rolling out RFQs and stuff. If we deploy technology properly, we will be able to justify the economics of getting those projects to come on board. And when those projects go online, we will then be able to provide energy at affordable rates. You can look around at quite a number of technologies that we know today. AI is one. Additive manufacturing is part of it. Robotics, all the things that are coming up lately, and they're moving really fast. But the purpose of those is to help us make energy accessible and in a cheap way. And the last part of it, just to quickly round this up if I could, is the sustainability part of it. I've said it, we cannot be irresponsible, and none of us is trying to be. And for that purpose, we need to start thinking of, okay, we need fossil fuel, for sure, we know it. Gas is gonna be part of that mix, if nothing else. How then can we help our customers? How then can we help the producers to do this? Part of it is looking at technology that allows us to use renewables to drive the fields. And you can look through, if we're paying attention to what's going on in technology today, there are now drilling rigs and subsea equipment that are all electrified, meaning you can potentially use energy from the wind farm that is pretty close, or even a tidal wave to drive that. In doing that, you're able to limit and help our customers limit the scope 1 and scope 2 of that emission spectrum. And also making sure that we improve the efficiency of the system. If you can get a well on stream quicker, then you're spending less time burning diesels on vessels, on rigs, and all the associated items. All of those come together to improve our carbon footprint. Now, I just kind of want to gloss over that, and I will pass it back to you, sir, so I don't
thank
get
you very much
this time.
Thank you very much. Yes, perhaps we need to be thinking about technology advancement. And let me slot into, maybe we need to be thinking about our tertiary educational system. CEO.
Thank you very much, sir.
You are welcome.
Yeah.
Please give us your perspective.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Adimula. I'm from the Petroleum Training Institute. Our mandate is primarily to develop the capacity, the human capacity technology for the oil and gas industry. And also, as we transit now to energy industry, we're also transiting and producing the capacity for the energy industry. Somebody defined earlier today that humanizing energy is all about exploring trends. And one of the trends that we find today in the world is about sustainability. That is how to produce energy in a sustainable way. And this is coming about from the fact that the energy that we use primarily today, that's the fossil fuel, has a lot of issues and produces greenhouse gases, which has a lot of negative impact on the environment. Thus, we need to have new forms of energy, and that largely today, the world is looking towards renewables and other forms of energy that are neutral, carbon neutral, and will not negatively impact the environment. And just as been noted, yes, all these new forms of energy, as good as they sound and given the potentials are possible, there are still a lot of shortcomings. For instance, if you look at a renewable energy like the sun doesn't shine 24 hours of the day, and then you need to find a way to store energy when the sun is shining. Now, that requires a lot of research to develop new storage facilities like smart batteries, batteries with high capacity, and all that. Now, all this call for, even as we talk of energy transition, maybe we should also talk about knowledge transition. We need a period of time where we need to retool, we need to rescale, and to develop new capacities to take advantage of all the possibilities that are there for us. Unfortunately, in this part of the world, we don't pay too much premium to research and development, nor do we fund education optimally. And that is why there's still that gap, and the gap is widening compared to other parts of the world. When in our first earlier presentation, we saw that China was doing so much in renewables and very little done in Nigeria, it's also because of the capacity to do what is possible. So one of the things that we think at Petroleum Training Institute is that even though as we humanize energy, we must also find ways to develop capacity, to develop the humans that will work in the energy industry, not just for now, but also in the future. What we do in the Institute is to bring up these future leaders of the industry that will make their impact in the industry by instilling the kind of knowledge we find that will help the industry to grow even in the future. So as we talk about humanizing energy, so far so good, but yes, there is one part we are leaving behind, and that is to carry the humans along in terms of developing them to have the capacity. If you talk about humanizing energy, you need to do a lot of advocacy, a lot of training. Now, all this, if we don't put them on board to begin to train, to begin to do the necessary advocacy, then we are leaving a large part of people behind. One of the things we can do to humanize energy is to find ways to make people use energy more efficiently. Unless they are trained, unless they are made aware, unless they are tutored to know what are the possible things that could be done, then we'll still continue to have some of these problems. So we're advocating, yes, energy transition is going on, sustainability and all that, but let's not forget the training and the R&D of the energy sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One of the important energy sources, one of them that is not paid attention to is energy efficiency. And therefore, public education is equally critical, which I think must be part of the strategic framework that the African government must think about. How do you bring on board the pathway to optimize humanizing energy? And I'm going to try to be apolitical. Humanizing energy must avoid waste. And I know Victor talks about technology, processes, and to a large extent, getting people to buy into your thinking. What did I say? And I'll be surprised if I can keep my promise. the debate about fuel subsidy or no fuel subsidy is part of the equation if you want to be efficient. And Victor, don't go into that area. Stay with your technology processes and in this humanization. Leave that one to me in my summary.
Yes.
Over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this wonderful occasion and discussing about energy. I would say we taught when we primary school that democracy is government of the people, thing for the people or by the people. And I would say energy is of the people and for the people. Whatever we need to know that energy is for human and human is for energy. And we don't need to take that out. And whatever technology or whatever we need to develop, we need to know that the technology is for the people. I know majority of us here are, Nigerians. We are not foreigners. I see few foreigners here. We have known that the policies makers and the policies for energy in Nigeria sometimes are anti-people. How many of us here maybe have tried to do electrification, maybe trying to draw energy into your facility? Maybe you build a new facility and try to see how to get energy into it. You discover that the setup of the energy policies are sometimes anti-people. I want to use myself as a case study. We bought a property in Port Harcourt and we built an assembling plant. And we're trying to bring in energy into the plant. And we talked to the PhD in Port Harcourt, and they gave us a bill. And we paid the bill. And when the time for commissioning came, and they told us that what we paid for is not what we desire. For us to get what we need to, because we're looking at getting the one they call line 33, the one that has at least 18 power. And they gave us line 11. And we said we need line 33 so that we can work effectively. And they brought another bill, and we paid for it. And after that, immediately the line was commissioned. The next month, they brought a bill. So you discover that is the energy policy, is it for the people or is it against the people? And that is one of the way of running businesses in Nigeria, which energy is number one of them and is very frustrating. So as a people, we shouldn't be even talking about transition when we have not made energy affordable. Because as it stands now, energy in Nigeria is not affordable. And we talked about technology. What technology are we deploying into our energy infrastructure to make it accessible and affordable? I was somewhere, we're talking about Italian, there is one company in Italy called Enel. Enel happened before was a state-owned energy company, and later on they now moved to maybe a private company. And someone came into that company called Francesco Terres. He came into that company and changed the company entirely. And when people were not talking about transition into renewable, this gentleman foresaw what is going to happen in the world and start building mini grid. Because this is what we in Nigeria need to look into. Today, there is a lot of energy generation, but there is no means of evacuation in terms of transmission. All our basically most our transmission line are phased out, are obsolete. So he brought in a technology that each suburb, each region supposed to have something like a mini grid, and that was achievable. So for us to think about that we will successfully transmit or transition into renewable, we need to consider that the people that need to use these must afford it, and we need to make it accessible. Prof, I think I should stop here at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think the bottom line is the transformation of energy system to become usable involves a lot of technological development. Unfortunately, there are three components, and Carol, I'm coming to you, I'm setting you up. By the way, don't worry, no grade. You have A already, about A+. Because really I'm a professor of E for she. So, no, jokes apart is economics, technology, and public policy. It's the interaction of the three. And each of them, like Iman said, there must be a collaboration. There must be a sync. And this one thing that has been established, Carol, by everybody else is humanizing energy begins with availability. When it is available, then it must be accessible. When it is accessible, it must then be acceptable. And when it is acceptable, it must be affordable. In that case, there must be a balancing act. And in economics, we call it Pareto optimality. It is impossible for somebody to be better off in a Pareto optimality efficiency, and someone will not be worse off. And that's what Africa is asking the Western world to understand, that in the economic development framework, we are not Pareto.
Yeah.
No. So in that case, we cannot talk in terms of being on the same plane, on the same speed with energy transition. That's where the concept of humanizing energy becomes critical, especially for the younger leaders. Because the future is really yours. I don't want to make any prophetic statement. I have been doing this for 50 years, right? Do you think I have another 50 years? Who knows? Carol, what is it that you want to give us to hold on to, even as we transist?
Thank you very much, Professor. The advantage of going last is that it makes my job very easy in terms of keeping to my assignment, 4 minutes or under. And like my co-panelist, I'm a good student. I believe in A's indeed. So even if Professor said I have a A, I want to keep it. So a lot has been said by my co-panelist already and by our honorable moderator, Professor. But I do still want to go back to a few of those points because they're at the heart of what I do, what we do at Olon. Olon is an impact investment vehicle that has been seeded by Shell to help close the energy access gap in Nigeria. And by virtue of what we do, humans, people are at the center of our work. It is the very basic nature of our work. So talking about basic step, when it comes to humans, all of us people, I think it's been said, cost is the number one thing. We talk about electricity, we talk about access, but at what cost? That's a very important point that when we sit down in such forums and discuss and put our minds together with regards to these kind of questions, we need to keep in mind. It has to be affordable. And for this to happen, we need to have a careful mix when it comes to our energy mix. or electrification planning. I think we've spoken already a lot this morning about, integrated electrification planning and being aware that, yes, energy transition is important, but it has to be done within a context of what a country has in terms of its energy sources. When you have this adequate mix and you are able to offer to the people a timed, a phased approach towards long-term energy transition, I think you're already in the right path. And like my colleague has mentioned earlier, when you do look at Nigeria's energy transition plan, you actually do smile with pride, because indeed it's been made very clear there what the end goal is, but also what are the medium-term steps to be taken to get to that goal, transitioning, utilizing gas and other important abundant resources in Nigeria. Another point when it comes to this important question that we are discussing is, yes, obviously the cost as mentioned, but aside of the cost, it's not just about ensuring that people have access to energy, but what type of energy. We really have to move forward past the light bulb access, charging 1 or 2 phones. But in long term, again, going back to the question, humanizing energy, what matters to the people? What matters to the people is to be able to obviously have productive uses of energy, not just have the lighting that's going to, which is critical, but that's going to be to allow us to just, do some work within the house, but how do we make that productive? How are we providing enough resources for people to really have the means to get out of energy poverty? That's very important. So when we look at cost, we also have to look at the different type of tiers of energies that we are providing to people. But those are points that are alluding to supply of energy, but that's not it. That's not enough. Another point of the energy transition, actually, even before I get to that other point, I think it's been mentioned, it's about making sure people have the skills. We talk about transition, we talk about energy transition. Well, that often comes with obviously very important impact when it comes to workforce, employment, labor force. Transitioning to various and different new type of energies must come with the important training for capabilities, ensuring that people have the right skills. It's not even just in the energy sector. When you look at AI, I believe somebody also mentioned earlier, artificial intelligence, the type of jobs are changing. People are being replaced. So how do we ensure that even before we get into the field, we already have the right tools? That's something that's very important and definitely part of our mission, because aside of just investing, we're also preparing Nigerian companies when it comes to helping them develop the right capacities to actually compete, not only in Nigeria, but internationally. Then maybe one final point is about also ensuring that we are not just receivers, receiving energy supply, but actors. What do I mean by that? One of the things that we're looking at very intentionally is the domestication of various elements of the supply chain. What we're talking about long-term sustainability. What about starting right now already ensuring that some of those elements that can be manufactured in Nigeria are already manufactured in Nigeria? A lot of the companies that we support in the off-grid sector, but obviously that's applicable to other sectors, still have to purchase however percent of their equipment overseas. With all of the devaluation and inflation issues that we currently know, you know that this does not go with longevity. So how do we fight that? Well, we right now are looking at ways to really strengthen localization of equipment made in Nigeria. So those are very important things. And Professor, just to finish on one last point, because you asked public, yes, technology is important, but the public sector is just as equally important, because no matter how the technology evolution, yes, they are there. We've also seen it in the solar sector. Many technology evolution have allowed for an important decrease of cost. But if you don't have the right policies in place to attract the different investments, the technology will not be able to take us as far as we need to. So yes, public-private partnerships are important. Right setup of regulations, and this is already in place in the sector and needs to keep growing. Professor, I think I did it, 4 minutes.
Thank you. Please let me recognize them all. I want to change the dynamics, because I know there are some of you in the audience. You've listened to a lot of this since morning. If nothing, it's just more or less becoming as if you are in a mosque or in a church. The pastor is speaking, the imam is speaking, you can't say anything. I want to change the dynamics. I want to hear from you. And then I will engage them in the closing remark. Now, there are two components to Nigerian audience. You hardly ask questions. You like to make a comment. But I want those who want to ask these panelists questions. Then I'll give opportunity in the next round to those who want to make a comment. Is there anybody? I'll give opportunity to 5 questions. You can direct it to any of them. Who would like to ask questions on this humanizing energy from the point of view of availability, accessibility, affordability, and acceptability? It's called quadruple A's. Any question? Raise up your hand from this. Any question?
Sorry.
What about this column? Any question, please?
This way, sir.
I'm coming that way. Any question? We call it equity.
Yes, sir.
None here? Tolu, no question. Here, one person. Madam, you are number 1. Keep that number. Number 2 at the back. Number 3. There. Anybody there? Number 4, madam. And then number 5. I'll come round. Questions, please. No comment, no preamble. Throw them a question. I'll come back.
Hold on to the mic. I'll get to you. Well, let me go with his numbering. You were number 1, right?
Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, I thought number 1 was here. No, okay, you are number 1.
Yeah. Well,
okay,
thank you
question,
very much,
please.
Professor. My name is Phoebe Joel. I'm a reservoir engineer in Shell, and my question really goes in direction of energy efficiency. We want people in humanizing energy. You mentioned, sir, that we need to educate people on even the use of energy. So aside from the educated people, is there any method that you think is reasonable or is efficient in educating the local people, the rural areas, about energy efficiency, using energy efficiently?
Thank you. Do you have any particular panelists on mind? Or I could throw it to anyone. Thank you. Energy efficiency, how do we promote? Number 2. Oh, did I give you number 2? No. Oh, number 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Mbazo Jeremiah. I'm the senior partner of Step Up Nuclear. I'm a nuclear engineer. My question goes to the panelists and also to you, Professor. I want to know, when you talk about humanizing energy, in what aspect of the energy spectrum are you talking about humanizing? And I want to also ask the all-on CEO. I'm thinking about the kind of energy projects or activities that you support. I wonder if you have maybe taken time to look into the nuclear energy development for Nigeria. I
think that's all. I hope you didn't vote twice, so I asked you to ask only one question. Number 3, please.
Hello. Thank you very much, Prof, and thank you to our panelists. I'm Dr. Sarah Winnie from Petroleum Training Institute, as well as CBWN. My question is on technology. Knowing that the technologies that are used in this industry are proprietary to the companies that are not domiciled in Nigeria, how do we leverage on knowledge transfer partnership to cascade this knowledge and build and utilize it to build homegrown technologies that will work for us as a nation? Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 4.
Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Tony Akimosho. I'm interested in the gentleman from the Petroleum Training Institute. What exactly is any specific project that the PTI is working on to help support the transition? I just need to know a specific project at the PTI, because curriculum development will be involved in the energy transition? Thank you very much.
Excellent question. Number 5 for now.
Okay. I am Engineer Queen Chibweze from Association of Professional Women Engineers in Nigeria, APOEM. My question is simple a bit. I want to find out, because when the first speaker, the second speaker made mention of the payment of energy and how much is paying. So I am asking, are the distribution companies in this summit, so that they will listen and take home and know how to use the outcome of this summit? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Osuji. Please continue to monitor time for us. We don't want to take you away from, because I told you we can be here for till 6 p.m. PTI, what are you doing in preparation for this transition? 2 minutes, please.
At PTL, we are doing quite a lot preparing for energy transition. Our core mandate is to train and to develop capacity. And one of the areas we saw that we will have need, as the gentleman also mentioned, is in curriculum development. And one of the things we did immediately we started this process is to approach the big players in the industry. We actually approached the OPTS, and we liaison with them so that together we can look at our curriculum, we can look at what we do, and look at where the state of the industry is, and also to advise us to have their own input in what we do. That is on one hand. Another thing we are doing internally also, we are doing a lot of R&D, doing a lot of research into alternative forms of energy and how to make this energy more efficient. We are working on that. And
you know, we have a lot of people who can fund you right here in this room. He wants to know, that guy who asked you the question can fund you.
Yes.
Just tell him exactly one project you are doing.
Okay.
Just one. He said, just give me one thing you are doing to humanize energy. And then meet him at the end, because he can give you money to fund. Just tell him.
So thank you. I thought we are looking at other forms of energy, and we are having
no, the question he asked you is, give me exactly what is exactly PTI is doing. Just use the curriculum development to cover you. Don't bite that. Tell him exactly one project you are doing.
Yes, we have a research team in biomass. And we have another research team that's looking at other forms of like wind and solar. All this, we have research clusters working on them.
Sorry, I'm not grading you, but I know the man who asked the question. And he wants to propose. Carol, I'm going on. No, your 2 minutes is gone. Carol, somebody asked you a specific question.
Point, but no, we do not. Our business model is very specifically focused on deploying capital to help off-grid solutions at scale, off-grid renewable energy solutions at scale, mainly solar, others, but not nuclear. Thank you.
Amen. You said that you are paying 75 naira per liter. Your contemporary wants to know whether there is any distribution company here. Is there any employee of the distribution company in the room? Please don't, just be proud of yourself.
No, but Prof.
No, don't answer the question here too. Because anybody from any disco company in this room, please, we are talking in terms of energy for the future. And you are talking in terms of humanizing energy. The contact between human beings with respect to using energy
is the distribution.
Are who?
The distribution companies here.
And the petrol stations, like petrol stations. If you live in the US like I do, you want to know any problem with respect to energy, the first thing when you wake up in the morning is to look at where?
Gas price.
They're on the display every morning. Now we don't have anybody in this school. Do we have anybody from downstream in this room? Do we have anybody from the regulatory authority in this room? Do we have anybody from Nigeria Electric Regulatory Commission in this room? And you want to humanize energy. And the facial, do we have anybody from academics in this room? Please stand up if you're from academic, not from PTL. Because if your director were not on this panel, you probably won't be here. If we want to humanize energy, these institutions that I'm mentioning are critical, but they are not here. So I continue to challenge the organizer of this. You did well, you gave free access to students, but do we have them here? If we are going to be successful with respect to the future and getting energy to be humanized, we need to get a way to get the people that are the interface between the society and us, users of energy. All right, because somebody was asking us, and anybody could respond to this, what spectrum are we talking about, right? When we talk about humanizing energy, the spectrum. Do you understand the question, Victor? Spectrum.
Our colleague here answered him a question because he made mention of nuclear, that if Nigeria is working on any nuclear programs or something, or which other forms of energy and spectrum of energy Nigeria is looking onto. She answered him on that. I think is this lady here that asked a question about how are we educating the people from the rural community about energy,
efficiency.
Efficiency. But let me just make a comment there. It's difficult for you to educate someone on something the person is not aware of, because most of those people you made mention of, they are still using lantern and they don't have access to electricity. So if you get to them and start, educating them about electricity, they don't know what it looks like. So what are the energy sources that should be, moving to rural area? What we need to talk about now? Okay, what kind of energy grid that's supposed to be constructed in people from here to have access to? So, but the people from the urban area are the people that need that education about energy sources and effective way of using energy, that you don't need to light up your bulb overnight and be consuming energy. There are some cities in December I was in London, and most of the street in London was dark because there is no energy to power them. So there are some people that have been that understand this energy rationing, that this time they need to move some source of energy to this side and some other they move it. So it's not for rural people, it's for the urban people. Thank you very much.
Please go ahead, Carol. How can you say energy is not for the rural people?
Education, the education of using energy. I'm saying you don't educate people that don't have access to it.
No, but...
All right, Carol.
Can you hear me? Yeah, on this point, obviously there's not one element that is the panacea.
There's one class.
Oh my God.
No, just on that point with regards to educating right at the heart of the communities, that's one of the beautiful things about off-grid and mini-grids. When you actually go into communities and install a mini-grid, the population at heart is obviously an actor, an agent, whether it's about, literally a collecting agent for the funds, or whether it's the maintenance. We often, very often, or if not always, have the community fully involved. And that's one of the reasons why, when it comes to humanizing energy, off-grid is definitely plays a key part in it.
Well, yeah, Tayo, I'm going to come to you, but let me go to Mrs. Agunloye.
Yeah, no, sir, I just want to cover 3 points. Maybe just, I think the point around education, I think the point you're trying to make is that the education for urban dwellers is different from the rural dwellers. Like so, for example, I pay 75 naira per kilowatt, but I have almost 100% performance. Like I always have electricity. So when we talk about affordability and accessibility and availability, you have to ask yourself, do you have to pay 75 naira per kilowatt to have it for 100% of the time? Because if you take that to the woman in the village, she's definitely not going to pay 75 naira per kilowatt. So the education and the provision for those people is very different. So that's the first point. The second point, you talk about spectrum. I think overarching point we've always made is that the Paris Agreement around getting to net zero at 2050 remains relevant. I think let's not leave this room thinking that we don't agree to net zero. The question is, what is underneath it? How do you get there, right? What you don't want is that you don't want to shut off one source before you are fully ready for the next. I'll give you an example. When I used to live in Houston, there was a time that we had snowfall, and then we had complete blackout for 2 days. To be honest with you, I had no clue what to do with my kids. I was so confused that we got into the car and I drove round and round and round and round. We're in complete darkness. So you can imagine in a developed country, just 2 days of snow, you are handicapped. So I think that's the whole question that we try to say is, how do you make sure you don't get yourself in that situation? So you transit quite nicely. So the spectrum sort of always continues to extend. And just specifically for nuclear, I'm actually a proponent of nuclear because I think it's quite clean, but I think the story and the image of nuclear needs to be told properly, right? It has a very bad image and people don't fully understand it. And the last point, I forget now, sorry, but I'll leave it there.
It's okay, it's okay. Tayo, no, I want you to just look at this concept of proprietary. And is there a way? The technology is never transferred. It's either you acquire it or you steal it. Yeah. And stealing is not robbing. No, No, listen. I'm sorry. 40 years ago, when I joined Shell, and on the rig, I let every person know that I'm coming to drive them out of business in Nigeria. And I followed them regularly to get the knowledge from them that 6 months I was already running a rig by myself, fresh from the university after national service, a $5 billion rig that has never drilled anywhere. I spotted the well, a young man, right?
It went there.
So, Tayo.
Yes, sir.
Technology, we don't have it.
Yeah.
But we are exposed to it.
Right. Thank you very much.
What can we do with it?
Thank you very much for that opportunity. I knew that question was going to come from Dr. Sarah. For those that don't know Dr. Sarah Winnie with PTI, she's one of the most passionate proponents of R&D in Nigeria. So I was expecting that. So let me just quickly address. So, sir, between acquiring and stealing, there's something in between. It's called licensing. And that's very important because, believe it or not, I have competitors whose technology I license. In other words, I pay them to use their technologies. It's not a shameful thing to do. My take on licensing and IP, we will have to live with it, and we have to collaborate. You mentioned collaboration. We have to collaborate, and quite frankly, if I find something interesting, I commercialize it, and you can come get it. Or if I think it's sensitive enough to where I can't compete with, and I'll find trusted vendors, trusted value chain, and build that around that. One thing we need to remember is technology providers are not always all-rounded. So coming back to what values does the technology in Houston give to Nigeria? Well, there are many vendors in that value chain, or there are many opportunities in that value chain of delivering that technology that can help and enrich the Nigerian value system, or retain value here. Having said that, I think from the R&D standpoint, we've always talked about, Dr. Sarah, you and I talk about this. There is the basic research, which we should never stop and should be in part of our curriculum. But then there's advanced research. I think what we need to do in Nigeria is that our advanced research need to focus on areas that other countries or other areas or companies do not find lucrative. I'll give you an example. Why don't we have vaccines for malaria? It is not lucrative, right? So they're not spending time on it. WHO maybe, but you won't find Pfizer and the Eli Lilly doing it. I just use as an example. It's not of concern to them because they can't sell it outside. So there are problems in Nigeria, in our industry, in the energy industry, oil and gas industries, that other countries do not face. That is where we need to focus on R&D on it. And, electricity. And electricity.
Humanizing energy.
All right. Can you hear me? Please, can you hear me? Well, there was a friend of mine. He came to Nigeria with his abroad wife, and they took light when he came. And when the light came, everybody was jubilating and happy. I said, why are they jubilating and happy?
Bro, they're not hearing you this way. So just wait for your mic to come on.
Okay. All right. Well, I just wanted to entertain while we are waiting for the light.
How many seconds were here? No, you know you were asking if discos were here.
Yes.
Yeah. Just give us a few more seconds and we're live.
All right. Then you have to increase my time.
Okay.
Wow.
So, Prof, while you're doing this, let me just give you this question before you call Chico to
Okay.
talk. Someone is asking, there's a question here. He said, energy subsidy removal and humanizing energy, any contradiction? That's for your panel, once your mic comes back on.
All right.
Give you that.
And this clock is moving so fast.
No, it's not moving so fast. It's moving as it should.
Is it humanized?
It's a humanized club. It's a humanized club. Guys, it's a humanized club.
How come it didn't stop when the light went off?
Okay, pause that time now. Pause the time. Thank you for pausing
You
the
see
time.
me go fast.
It's on UPS,
Pause the
sir.
time. It is paused now. So it's a human club. It's a humanized club. Yeah, it's a human club.
Well.
Okay, Prof. Try again. Let's see if the mic is not on, but try speaking. It's not on yet.
All right. Please, if you can hear me, I think my story is already not particularly relevant. But then they took light after she had arrived in Nigeria for a couple of days. The first time they were jubilating because light came. She was surprised. The second time the light went off, she was there and she saw light being off. And when they brought the light, what do you think she was doing?
Jubilating.
That's for you to ponder about. Now, I gave you an opportunity that for those who would like to make comment, if you can summarize your comment in 1 minute, I will call you. I have 3. 1 lady and 2 men. And don't ask me why, because I had more ladies the first time than this time. Number 1, Madam. Number 2, no, only 1 lady, please. All right. Number 3, not you, because you've spoken once. All right. I'll start with number 3. I've already given you number 2, Madam. You are number 2. Yes. Number 1, then you are number 3, right? So let me start with number 3. Microphone, please. 1 minute, because this thing is running too fast, and it's affecting my brain.
Thank you.
Is this humanizing me in energy?
Shinan Dikwal, African Energy Council. My question is, we talk about humanizing energy. What does it really mean? I think for many of us, we're not quite clear. What are the particular nuggets of humanizing? We talk about affordability and all of that. Is that the only thing? Is there more to it, to humanize energy? Is there design thinking? Is there system thinking? what does it really mean to humanize? Is it all about cost and economics?
So everything we've been saying for this last, all right, number 2.
My name is Chidima Obi. I represent Tinto Energy. Mine is a comment, and it's to all of you. Is it possible to put a time frame within which this humanizing energy can be done? And the people who are selling alternative energy, some of us can't even afford it as long as it is. How will it go round to the rural areas? A lot of us have villages that we go to. It is impossible as we speak in Nigeria today for alternative energy to be afforded in our communities.
Thank you. Number 1, who's my number 1? Thank you. Remember 1 minute, please.
I'm Femi Akarakiri with Ondo State Government. Whether via the transition of energy or with the current one, I think the challenge that we need to face as a country is how to actually domesticate the technologies involved. And that's why I was quite excited when I heard for the first time towards the tail end of the panel, R&D. We are not doing what we need to do. So whether with the current one or the one that we want to transit to, if we want that transition to be with ease, we have to find a way to make sure that we invest in R&D. We cannot do it with imported technologies. It will be too expensive. So I hope that come next year, we'll be able to have a panel session on R&D in Nigeria. Thank you.
You remember that story from the scripture, that person that was asking the judge, and the judge finally said, please give it, please, comment, please. I surrender my own time in my comment.
I'm Dr. Esiche, Director R&D, Petroleum Training Institute. My comment is this. Several years ago, when I was doing my master's, I used the facilities of Shell. And by the time I was done, I asked them, what challenges do we have that one can research on so that I can pick it up for my PhD? And the response was that all our research is done outside the country. So I am glad for the comment he made. That,
who's the he? Yeah, we are 3.
Tayo.
Okay.
Tayo, saying that our problems, we must develop R&D towards the problems we have. Because if it's not something peculiar to us, the West will not be interested in it. Now, my comment, therefore, is that the academia and the industry right now must come together. They should let us know what the challenges are, and then those of us in academia can do researches to solve those problems. And perhaps now that the West is pulling back from funding, maybe they will now look back in our direction. Because what they said then was that all our researches are done from outside. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Listen, I have 1 minute to go. And no, please forgive me. I have only 1 minute to go, and I'm a timekeeper. And everything I've done will be nullified if I broke their rule. I want to be invited back. So please, I want us.
Sorry, Professor, sorry not to interrupt, but you have 2 Shell people here, and Shell has just been indicted that we said that we cannot support local research. So I think it's fair to give Shell an opportunity to truly explain what we do as a company.
No, are you representing Shell on this panel?
Yes.
No, but I'm the moderator. All right. Listen, you can choose to defend Shell when you give the final comment, and that's where we are now. I'm going to give all of you 2 minutes. Look at the comments people have. Look at the one that concerns you the most. The person that wanted to know the definition. You have 2 minutes to convince him that what you've said before is really the definition of. So please, let's take 2 minutes quickly, and I won't take more than 2 minutes to round up my own opinion. Remember that question. Subsidy removal and humanizing energy. Is there a contradiction? So, Carol, I'm going to start from you and finish with Amen. 2 minutes, please.
Been part of this very exciting panel. I think one of the last lady made was with regards to cost of electricity in rural areas. And I do want to come on that point because there are a few things. I don't have enough time to go through all of the different layers, but one thing that I will address is that cost is important, but there's also the perception of what it truly costs. I think there's a lot of work to be done with regards to changing the perception of what it truly costs now for off-grid solutions in rural economies. However, that being said, I agreed, even if cost has decreased and even if cost might not be as high as it is perceived, cost does remain a question, I agree. One thing that we do need to think when it comes to off-grid sector, renewable energy, is the fact that subsidy is very important. It is still a nascent sector. And very often people say, oh, we should get away from this because it's too costly and it still relies on subsidy. Well, no. When I hear that, I really I make the plea to remind people that when it comes to developed countries, wealthier economies, none of those countries have gotten to where they are currently when their electricity level without heavily subsidizing electricity access, be it through transmission lines that were costly and that were fully developed or heavily developed through public funds as a public good or other ways of subsidizing. So yes, cost is an issue, but it is a fact that we must take into account when we look at the renewable energy sector and off-grid access, because at the end of the day, it is still the fastest and most cost-competitive way of connecting people in rural areas who do not have access to energy and electricity very specifically. Thank you.
Wow. Victor, 2 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Prof. I want to make a comment on the, the proprietary. I know, Mrs. Taya was trying to make, give more explanation about that. Our company, Kenyan International, operate, and we're in business today because of, partnership. A lot of companies out there are willing to collaborate if actually you have what it takes for them to collaborate with you. Collaboration is all over the world. The Americans are collaborating with the Japanese are Europe are collaborating with Asia, North and South America. But I think most of the problem we have is that most of our government representatives, whenever they want to sign some bilateral agreement, it sometimes sells us out because some of these things can be discussed during whenever they want to sign most of those agreements, but sometimes they will just sign agreement that is just one-sided. So companies and countries out there are willing, to collaborate when there is a win-win situation. So we can reach out to anyone that we want to collaborate with, and whenever they see, the potentials from them, from whatsoever business or whatsoever is going to come up, they'll be willing to collaborate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. CEO.
Thank you very much, sir. My comments will be on R&D, and also to say that at the Institute we have research clusters around topical issues or problems of the oil and gas industry, and also humanizing energy. We are open for collaborations. We need funding, we need support, and I believe that with this kind of forum we have here, and where we have the necessary support, we can develop our homegrown technologies that will help to serve the industry in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tayo.
I just want to spend the next minute or so to rehash the whole concept of humanizing energy. It is not a project, so it's not something you start and you finish. It's a mindset. It's a mindset that says humans need energy, so the purpose of energy is to benefit humans, and it has to be available to all of them. It's the same mindset that says, while you're doing that, you need to be cognizant of the impact of your action, getting the energy or using the energy on the sustainability of the environment. And there's a part of it, there's a third part of it that we didn't get to actually talk about, which is understanding the fact that Africa, as an example, energy is of economic importance to us. That's what, well, let me put it this way. Fossil fuel. What is it?
I don't think they like. I don't think discos like.
No, they do not like me at all. I'm going to try and project. I think the last part is to understand the fact that many African countries and maybe some other third world countries still rely on the energy or the resources that is available to them. And making a transition or a policy that makes it impossible for them to use their resources is not humanizing energy. I hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you. Well,
Okay, I'll try. I don't know. Is it loud enough?
Yes.
oh, sorry. I can interpret. Let me be your loudspeaker.
No, Prof. I can do that for her if she wants.
Okay. Go ahead.
If you want me, I can amplify whatever you say.
Oh, okay.
Who am I?
Well, I think, let me summarize, let me try and project, but let me summarize maybe 5 key things. One is, I think we've talked about the story for humanizing energy has to have the human part of it, right? We have to make sure we care about what happens to people. I think the second point we've made here is climate change and sustainable development remain the same part of the coin, right? It's not one or the other. So that's the whole message around. You have to think about it in totality. I think third, we've talked about Nigeria and Africa as its own does not have enough capacity from renewable to go through the transition as the rest of the world. So we have to create our own transition journey that is different from the rest of the world. And gas remains a critical part of the story as we transit. And I think until the United Development Goal 7 says power for all, until we get to a point where every person is treated fairly, equitable, we would not really tell the true story about climate change. And finally, I want to talk about Shell. I've worked for Shell for about 18 years, and I've worked in various locations. And the lady talked about our research always done abroad.
You may try. Try the mic.
Does it work now? Okay. Perfect, just about Shell. So I think, let me conclude, as I said, just to talk about Shell is, I've worked in different parts of the world, and I've worked quite extensively with Shell. When it comes to research, our research can be globalized, but it's also very much localized. And we do a lot of partnership with a lot of the schools. So even when I was working in Port Harcourt, when I was working in Lagos, the solutions for each of our local environments is very unique and is very different. So I apologize that your experience was different, but very, very different. And we do have local, global research, but each OU or each operating unit still has its own local need being met, and we partner with universities. So let me conclude that I said, let's not forget, sustainable development and climate change remain the same part of the coin, and everybody should have access to electricity. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. I think let's recognize them, even as I give you
Please, I have an
just my 2-minute summary. I'm not a Shell apologist. Quote me anywhere. All you need to do is to look at the indigenous company in Nigeria producing oil. Then you will understand what Shell did for Nigeria. I'm not going to say more than that. I'm not a Shell apologist. But anybody that is condemning Shell needs to go back to history. I work in the oil and gas industry for many years. And I can stay in the west side location in my days till 3 a.m. in the morning, and nothing will happen to me when I'm going back to the rig. So I understand. And unfortunately, nobody wants to talk about energy humanizing, not humanizing, humanizing. With respect to petroleum subsidy removal. And the question is removing petroleum subsidy dehumanizing energy? And the answer is no. And I want to talk more about this. You can read more about my opinion about that. I'm not afraid of politics. Listen, it is transactional leadership mindset that has perpetuated petroleum subsidy in Nigeria. Transactional leadership mindset among the Labour Congress. That's why every leader of the NLC can only get a button if he went to strike because of petroleum subsidy. Listen, it is not dehumanizing energy to remove petroleum subsidy. In fact, it is optimizing human energy centrics. If you remove petroleum subsidy, that made the roads worse off, the hospitals worse off, the medical infrastructure worse off, and making your young people to Japan. I didn't hear amen. So next time we can put it as a topic, and I want to guarantee you that the Nigerian Association for Energy Economics will actually have a workshop on that. It's removing petroleum subsidy, dehumanizing energy, or humanizing energy. Thank you very much. And by the way, I told the organizer that keeping you till 6 p.m. will not be a trouble for me. No. I thank you for your cooperation. Please, let's recognize these great panelists.
Please remain seated, panelists, for just...
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Just 2 more minutes. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you so much. We want to do a humanizing thing by appreciating your contributions to this conference today. Before I get to that, this evening, the dinner at the State